Back in May, I did a video breaking down exactly how I thought the first round of fantasy drafts should be going in 2025. But let's be real, that was months ago. It's time for an update. Fantasy drafts are right around the corner. We got to get you prepared. This is how I feel first round of fantasy drafts should be going right now. Let's start with the 101, and it's got to be Ja'Marr Chase. Now, I'll say if you're in a non-PPR league, meaning not half PPR, not full PPR, just, touchdowns, yards only, sure, you can go with one of the running backs. But most people play in some sort of PPR, and assuming you're one of those people, think Ja'Marr Chase has to be the 101. Last year, he led all wide receivers in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. He's averaged 19.5 points per game over his first 4 seasons in his career. Last year, his offense, Cincinnati, ranked second in pass play percentage and pass attempts per game. And none of that should change this year. This defense hasn't gotten significantly better. This is still going to be a team that's going to have to throw the ball a lot, and they're going to throw the ball a lot because they have Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins. Why wouldn't they throw the ball a lot? Really, the only times we haven't seen Ja'Marr Chase be great for fantasy is when either A, Joe Burrow isn't healthy, or B, Chase himself isn't healthy. Assuming both of these guys are healthy all year long, we know what the upside here is. The upside is the best wide receiver in all of fantasy, maybe the best player in all of fantasy, honestly. So again, in any sort of PPR league, I know that's tempting to take those running backs, but I think Chase has to be the 101. I know there's worry about the curse of the 101 or whatever, and the 101 has kind of been cursed recently, but I think Chase has just way too much upside to ignore here. So maybe the curse continues, maybe Chase gets hurt, maybe Burrow gets hurt. I don't know what would have to happen here for him not to finish as a 101, but I'm going to take my chances and draft Ja'Marr Chase at the 101. Now at the 2, I am going to have our first running back. That's Bijan Robinson, over 1,900 scrimmage yards last year, not to mention 15 touchdowns. And it's weird. It's kind of like he did this, and nobody really noticed because other running backs were so good. But Bijan Robinson was literally one of the best running backs in all of football last year. He had the 4th highest snap share of all running backs. He had the most weighted opportunities of all running backs. Yes, even more than Saquon Barkley. And he's on a team that ranked 9th in rushing plays per game. And the offense should only get better with Penix Jr. under center. Remember, for the first, almost the entire season, really until the last few weeks, this offense was really struggling because of Kirk Cousins. And I know there's been a lot of talk Penix Jr. doesn't really check the ball down, and that's true. But look at the 3 games with Penix Jr. last year. This guy had 12 targets in those games, 5 targets in 2 of those games. I don't think pass catching is going to be an issue here. Maybe he doesn't lead the all running backs in receptions, but 50 or more receptions seems like a lock for Bijan Robinson. That is definitely enough. And this is a running back that checks every box we want. He's entering year 3. He's in a good offense with a good enough quarterback. He's in an offense that wants to run the ball. And he's one of the most talented running backs in the entire NFL, real life or fantasy. So for me, Bijan Robinson checks every box I want. If I don't get Ja'Marr Chase with the 101, or if you're in a non-PPR league, you could take Bijan with the 101. But right now, for PPR ranking purposes, I'm going to put Bijan at number 2. Now, at number 3, I'm going to put Saquon Barkley, which might be a little surprising considering he just came off one of the best seasons in NFL history. I just like, the youth and potential upside of Bijan a little bit more, but nothing wrong with Saquon Barkley here. Once again, we're hearing a lot of people say, oh, you can't draft Saquon Barkley this year. Too many touches, not going to be as good. Last year, they were saying things like, oh, Jalen Hurts is going to vulture touchdowns. Oh, Jason Kelce, the offensive line won't be very good. Look, there's a simple strategy that always works in fantasy football. Draft elite players in elite situations. Saquon Barkley is an elite player in an elite situation. Now, sure, there's definitely risk here coming off a season with so many touches that the injury risk may be slightly higher than it normally would be, but doesn't mean he's guaranteed to get hurt. And sure, he's probably not going to have another 2K yard season because having a 2,000 yard season is hard to do once, let alone twice. So yeah, he's probably going to regress a little bit. But that being said, he's still probably going to be awesome. The offensive line is still one of the best offensive lines. He's in one of the best offenses in football, one of the best offenses for running backs in football, and he's on a team that's probably going to win many games this year, which means just like we saw last year, a lot of positive game script. Look, Saquon Barkley didn't dominate the first half and then do nothing in the second half. Saquon Barkley was one of these running backs that a lot of weeks he was just kind of okay in the first half, and then he would explode in the second half when the Eagles were way ahead and just running the football. That's what we're going to see again this year. Saquon Barkley is still in the prime of his career. He's still one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. He's in one of the best situations. Don't fade him for things that could happen. I mean, anything could happen, let's be real here. But what's more likely to happen if this guy stays healthy is he's an awesome running back again, and you want to draft him in fantasy football. So Saquon Barkley going to come in at number 3 for me. Now, at number 4, I'm going to go with wide receiver Justin Jefferson. And despite losing Kirk Cousins last year, he was still very good. I mean, over 1,500 yards last year, 10 touchdowns, finished as a wide receiver 3 in points per game, even with Sam Darnold. And if you take out his 2023 season when he only played 10 games, he's never gone under 1,400 receiving yards and never scored less than 7 receiving touchdowns. Not only is this guy arguably one of, if not the best wide receivers in the NFL, but his head coach understands it. He knows how to get this guy the ball. They scheme the whole offense around him. They find ways to get this guy the ball. And I'm not worried at all about J.J. McCarthy here. Look, Kevin O'Connell is a QB guru. It doesn't matter who the QB is. As long as the QB is competent enough, this guy can make him good. Look what he did with Sam Darnold last year. Look at 2 years ago what he did with guys like Nick Mullins and Joshua Dobbs. You don't think he can make J.J. McCarthy good enough to support Justin Jefferson? No worries here with Jefferson. It sounds like all these injuries that people started freaking out about are nothing. He's back at practice this week. Not at all worried about Justin Jefferson. He's a stud wide receiver. He gives you tons of weekly upside to go with a very high floor. Again, in your PPR leagues, you should be just fine with Jefferson at number 4. And a lot of times you can even get him later than this. I've gotten him pick 6, pick 7 in my fantasy drafts. If that happens, I'm taking Justin Jefferson every time. It's like people have forgotten that this guy is legitimately one of the best players in the league and one of the best players for fantasy. Now, at number 5, I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb. Look, after signing that huge contract last year, it was not really a great season by CeeDee Lamb standards. Only finished as a wide receiver 6 in points per game last year with essentially 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns. But remember, he didn't play 2 games last year, and he didn't have Dak Prescott after week 9. Had to play with Cooper Rush. And the last time we saw a fully healthy CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott together back in 2023, this guy had over 1,700 yards, 12 touchdowns, and was the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Now, I will say maybe the one thing that makes me a little nervous for CeeDee Lamb is the addition of George Pickens, because now he actually has a legit number 2 wide receiver to compete with for targets. But then I remember that over the last 2 years, the Cowboys have finished first in both fantasy points to wide receivers and expected fantasy points to wide receivers. There's more than enough here for both of these guys. Look, CeeDee Lamb finally coming into the season with a full training camp, fully healthy. Dak coming into the season fully healthy. We're going to see these guys look much more like the 2023 versions than the 2024 versions. I know CeeDee Lamb was a bit of a disappointment last year, but I still think this guy has to be a top 5 pick. Now, before I get to the rest of the list, let me ask you, do you want to play in fun fantasy leagues with Pierre and myself that have unique features you can't find anywhere else that absolutely 10x the fantasy football experience? Well, now you can. Just go to your App Store or the Google Play Store and download our app, DraftLane. Create a free account in seconds and then head to draftlane.com/play to join a free league today and experience the future of fantasy football right now. Coming in at number 6, I got Jahmyr Gibbs. I feel like people are just a little too high on Jahmyr Gibbs this year. I feel like this is probably where he needs to be. Look, Jahmyr Gibbs was great last year. Won your fantasy championships, was a monster down the stretch, but we got to look at it with and without David Montgomery. From weeks 1 to 14 with a healthy David Montgomery, he went over 100 total yards 7 times and over 150 total yards just once. Then from weeks 15 to 18, remember Montgomery left very early in weeks 15, he went over 100 total yards in every game and over 150 total yards in 3 of those games. Also, when you look at the first 14 games, he had 12 touchdowns with a healthy Montgomery, but he added a whopping 8 touchdowns in the last 4 games without him. Look, even with David Montgomery healthy, this guy is still very good and still worthy of a first-round pick. I just don't think we're going to see the guy we saw at the end of the season with a healthy David Montgomery. If David Montgomery was out of the picture, either due to injury, trade, release, whatever, which isn't going to, I mean, he could get injured, but the other 2 aren't going to happen, then yeah, I might have Jahmyr Gibbs as the 101 even over Jamar Chase. But Montgomery is there. He's going to steal touchdowns. He's going to steal touches. That's enough to knock Jahmyr Gibbs just outside my top 5. At number 7, I'm going to go with one of my dark horses to finish as the wide receiver 1 this year, Nico Collins. This guy has back-to-back years averaging over 17 fantasy points per game, and if you look at it last year from weeks 1 to 5 before he injured his hamstring, he was the wide receiver 2 and only had 2 less points than Jamar Chase. And remember, in that week 5 game, he only played 13% of the snaps because he injured his hamstring very early in that game. He would have been the top-scoring wide receiver through the first 5 weeks had he played the entire week 5 game. And this guy has all the makings of what we're looking for in a stud wide receiver. He can run the entire route tree. He had a 77% success rate versus man last year and an 82% success rate versus zone and press. and he has very little competition for targets here. Christian Kirk, yeah, he's fine. He's a good late round sleeper. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, the rookies. I mean, it sounds like Xavier Hutchinson might be ahead of Jaden Higgins right now. Not worried about these guys taking targets. Nico Collins is going to be a monster in this offense. And remember, he did what he did those first 5 weeks last year with a healthy Tank Dell, with a healthy Stephon Diggs. In the last 2 years, the Texans have been 12th and 11th in pass plays per game. And that number could go up this year if they struggle to run the football with Nick Chubb or Dameon Pierce as potentially the lead backs here. Now, I will say the only concern I have for Nico Collins is his injury history. This guy is yet to play a full season, but that doesn't mean he can't play a full season. It's not like if he's always been hurt 1 year, he's going to always be hurt. I mean, James Conner went into last year never having played a full season, and he basically played a full season. We've seen it with other guys. He wouldn't be the first guy to do it. If he does play a full season this year, he absolutely has everything it takes to be the top scoring wide receiver in fantasy this year. So when I get to this spot, Nico Collins is the guy I'm looking at. And then right behind him at number 8, I'm going to have Christian McCaffrey. I know he burned you last year, but all signs are pointing to this guy being fully healthy this year. There hasn't even been one peep about this guy nursing any kind of injury, any kind of tendonitis, any kind of soreness, nothing. And if you take out his rookie season, in the 4 years where he's played 16 games or more, he's finished as the RB2, the RB1, the RB2, and the RB1. This guy is just a guy who needs to stay healthy to have true league-winning upside. I think you've got to take a chance on it. And you look at it last year, you could say, oh, it was the tendonitis. But when he came back from that tendonitis injury, he was playing over 80% of the snaps, getting his usual touches. He had gone over 100 scrimmage yards each of the first 2 games. He was fine. Like, there was no issue from the tendonitis. Unfortunately, he suffered that freak knee injury on the cold, frozen tundra of Buffalo. We don't know what this guy would have done over the second half of the season. A fully healthy Christian McCaffrey is arguably the best player in fantasy football. Now, I know there's risk. He's up there in age. He's missed games. I understand why he's this low. If it was like no worries at all, he'd be higher. But there are worries. But still, I don't think I could put him any lower than this. The upside is just too high for this guy. Then at number 9, I've sadly had to move Malik Nabers down. Now look, again, kind of like Christian McCaffrey, if I knew this guy was fully healthy, good to go, he'd be up higher. But he's battling these little nagging injuries. I don't really care about the shoulder, the back, kind of like Justin Jefferson. Eventually we're going to hear it's not an issue, he's back at practice. But what I think you do have to be a little worried about is the toe, because this isn't going away. This is going to linger all season long. And there is a chance that at some point during the season it becomes too much to play through, and maybe they have to shut him down for a game or 2 or 3 or whatever it is. And that's going to hurt if he's your first round pick. But with that said, this guy is a monster. I mean, 18.2 fantasy points per game last year, playing with arguably the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Now he's going to have either Russell Wilson, rookie Jackson Dart, or Jameis Winston. Any of those guys will be a massive upgrade over what he had last year. And kind of like Jefferson, I love the way the Giants use this guy. Second in targets to Jamar Chase last year. Only 5 behind this guy despite playing 2 less games, because Brian Daboll and the Giants realize he's got to be our entire offense. He's going to be their entire offense this year anytime he's on the field. Again, the only thing I think that can really hold him back here is the toe. But if he plays all 17 games, if the toe isn't an issue this year, maybe he has offseason surgery on it or something, this guy legitimately could also be the top scoring wide receiver in fantasy. He has that kind of upside, that kind of game. And now he actually has quarterbacks that can throw him the football. So yeah, I've had to drop him a little bit because of the toe. You can't ignore it. You can't pretend it's not there. It's going to be there all year. But still, this guy has so much upside, I can't drop him out of the first round. Then at number 10, another running back that nobody wanted to draft last year for reasons that didn't really make sense, who was awesome in one-year league, Derrick Henry. Because again, like I said with Saquon, when you got elite players in elite situations, just draft them. Does it always work out? Of course not. Nothing always works out, but it works out more often than not. Last year had all the same arguments, right? Like, oh, he's too old. He's got too many touches. Lamar Jackson's going to vulture all the touchdowns here. And instead, he went out there and had arguably one of his best seasons ever. Over 2,000 total yards, 18 touchdowns last year. This is the perfect situation for Derrick Henry because Lamar Jackson, a mobile QB who can also throw the football, forces defenses to look at other things. Back in Tennessee, defenses just said, hey, we just got to shut down Derrick Henry. They can't do that anymore. Look, Derrick Henry doesn't have the juice he had in his prime, but he's still more than good enough, still one of the best running backs. If he plays all 17 games, probably going to put up another top 5 season. I know, there's risk again. Anytime you got a player getting up there in age, you know at any time, maybe he falls off the cliff, maybe he has an injury, or maybe he just keeps chugging along like a unicorn and putting up top 5 seasons. You got to take a chance here on Derrick Henry. Too good of a situation, too good of a player, too much upside. Now at number 11, full disclosure, this is where it gets tough for me. There's probably like 5 or 6 guys I could make an argument for to be spots 11 or 12, but at pick 11, I'm going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown. 2 straight years as the wide receiver 4 in points per game, just had a career high 12 touchdowns, has had 140 or more targets in 3 straight years. Sounds like he should be higher, right? But I just look at him and I say, how does he get better from here? Like, how do we get something better than what we've seen the last 2 years? Not that what we've seen the last 2 years is bad, it's just like, I need more, right? I want somebody who can, like a Nico or a Jefferson or a CD, who can like be the top scoring wide receiver. And I don't know if Sun God can do that. Because you look at this offense, you got Jameson Williams emerging. Last year had a nice breakout, probably going to get better this year. Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield, catching passes. Sam Laporta there as a tight end. There's just a lot of competition here. It's hard to see how does Amon-Ra St. Brown take that next step to get even better in fantasy, to get more targets, more receptions, more yards, more touchdowns. I just don't see it happening. I think he'll probably be very similar to last year, which, look, that's great. At pick 11, you're taking that. I mean, this guy gives you one of the highest floors in all of fantasy football with a decent ceiling. So nothing wrong with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a very safe pick here. I just think the other guys ahead of him have higher upside. And then at number 12, rounding that out, is going to be Drake London. This is the guy I'm coming around on as like, you know what, maybe this guy is also a dark horse to be the wide receiver 1. I know all these guys can't be the wide receiver 1. There's only going to be one wide receiver 1, but man, you look at what happened with Michael Penix down the stretch last year, going into this year, it's easy to see how you can get excited. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, he was on pace for 200 targets, 1,900 yards. That's what we're going to get this year. No, we're not going to get 200 targets, 1,900 yards. But it's just a fact that Michael Penix Jr. was looking for him so much, gave him such a big boost in this offense, the offensive boost, a quarterback boost. Now they've had a full offseason together. All the talk out of camp sounds like Michael Penix is playing great. And even with Kirk Cousins last year, Drake London had a breakout season, and he's a great player. Last year, he had a 74% success rate versus man, 78% versus press, and 81% versus zone. I don't think the breakout season was a fluke last year. I think it was just a step to something even better this year. I really think Drake London is going to get better in 2025. And again, I think he's got a chance. Of course, only one guy can do it, but I think he's one of those guys that has a chance to be the wide receiver 1. I want that upside with my first round pick. Now let's talk about some guys that just missed the cut here. I had Brian Thomas Jr. in that video before as a first round pick, but that was, they had just drafted Travis Hunter. We weren't sure if he was going to play defense or offense. We have clarity on Travis Hunter now. It sounds like he's going to play more wide receiver than DB. Remember last year, like really all he was competing with was Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk. Look, Brian Thomas Jr. is a great player. I'm not saying like he's going to be a bust. Early second round, fine. Even late first round, you want to take him over Amon-Ra or Drake London? I'm totally okay with that too. I just worry that maybe Travis Hunter eats into his target share enough to where I feel more comfortable about him early second round. And then Puka Nacua, I talked about him on the Panic video. A little worried about Stafford. I know Stafford finally returned to practice, but in what capacity? And there's still a risk that this guy is like one hit away from being done for the season. Not to mention, Devontae Adams gives him a much better number 2 target than what they had last year with Cooper Kupp. So again, Puka Nacua, you want to take him in the first round? No argument for me. As I said, like all 6 of these guys, I could interchange them, but just a little worried about the Stafford situation. The rookie running back, Ashton Jeanty, I also had him in the first round of that first video, but the more I think about it, the more I think early second round probably makes sense. Look, I think the touches will be there. I think we can see this guy get over 300 touches. I certainly think the talent is there. I know the talent is there. I just worry about the situation. Like, what's the touchdown upside in year 1 in this offense for the Raiders? And how often do we see running backs have like their career year in year 1? Maybe next year I'll feel like, yeah, this guy's a locked in, no doubt first rounder. But right now, I think I prefer early second. And then finally, Devon Achane. I love Devon Achane. I know people are worried about this soft tissue thing. I'm not worried yet. Look, people were all freaking about Justin Jefferson. He's fine. He's back. I think Achane is going to be fine. He's going to be back. If he misses week 1, week 2, yeah, it's not the best, but you can live without Devon Achane for the first couple weeks. I still think this guy on the field with a healthy Tua gives you legit RB1 upside. But at the same time, I can't ignore the injury here, and I can't ignore the fact that Tua might miss games as well, and that will really hurt Achane. So can't quite put him in round 1. Early second round, great for him. So there you go. That's what the first round of fantasy drafts should look like right now heading into your fantasy football drafts. But if you want to get ready, you got to prepare in way more ways than this. We got you covered. Check out our playlist right here.